got a full house again. It's great that so I was just mentioning to everybody that we really appreciate everybody taking time to tune in, to listen to these stories, and to hear straight from the source, you know, from you about your career, about your art, and about what you've experienced as a writer. And when we last left off, you were mentioning painting with T-Kid, and how you have to show up in a certain manner, bringing your A, your B, and your C game, yeah, if you're going to show up. And so I think it's very important for folks to understand that. And so although we have a lot of writers in this room, so to speak, there's a lot of folks that might not know, you know, or see the world the way that you might be seeing it. And so can you just, again, to kind of kick this off, why does someone have to bring so much game, so to speak, or such level of excellence if they're going to paint with someone like T-Kid?
So yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of lanes in the culture in terms of things that people are into doing, right? Piecers, guys that do elaborate renditions of their names, you know, it's like you take so much pride in that. I know, at least I do, right? But for the most part, you know, I think that's why maybe so many guys are still piece. The guys that are really trying. I don't want to talk about the guys that just piece for the hell of piecing. But the guys that are really trying to flip their styles, trying to change it up, trying to do something different every single time, you know, you could see the pride. It comes out, right? So I'm a very prideful person in terms of, you know, what I do, right? You know, that's why I put the effort forth. So, you know, if you're going to paint against somebody as good as T-Kid, because T-Kid is at the level of, you know, he's an icon, right? In the culture around the world. Everybody recognizes the name. You know, they know the folklore. I got to know the folklore before the rest of the world knew the folklore. And he's known for being, you know, a guy who's just a stylist. Like he's got his own style, you know what I mean? Like, you know, he just does things the way he does them. And I don't think that there's anybody else that does them exactly like he does. I mean, there's people that have been influenced by him. You can see his influences and a bunch of people after him that he was painting with. And then those guys went on to create their own lanes, right? And I think it's that same pride that drove them to be that much better. But yeah, when you come and you paint with somebody with T-Kid, if you've been watching him and you've seen what he's done, you know that it's not going to be that difficult for him to smoke you if he's on his A game. You know, it's going to pretty much be, you know, a done deal unless you really come at him with something that's really strong. I mean, that's just the way it is. I'm going to keep you 100. It's the truth. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Sure. I mean, and here, and you see in this particular wall that you guys painted together, it looks like you guys took it easy on each other.
I didn't know T-Kid was coming that day. So it's funny because Part was there. I think Part was there. Ree was there. A few other guys were there. But I was painting on the wall by myself when he showed up maybe an hour or two afterwards. You know, I was already on my fill, you know, just starting my fill when he started, you know, laying his outline down. But, you know, it was like I already knew what outline I was doing. I didn't know how I was going to lay the colors out. I didn't know. That wasn't the original 3D that I was going to do. I was going to do a straight down 3D, you know, and then you know, you can't really see the colors in the picture, but my background is completely different because when he did the red, you know, like that red, I had lighter pink I was going to do around with some purple. And then once I saw what he was doing, I had extra paint and then I flipped that. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put these colors behind mine to try to separate my piece out so that my piece stands up in front because the pieces were so similar in color.
Right. So you had to adjust.
Yeah. Because I walk, you know, that's the luxury of painting on a wall, right? You can walk back, you can look at it from a distance. It's not like painting a train. You could just stand back and you could look at it. And I could see that if I did red, like he was doing the red, then my piece was going to disappear. My 3D was going to disappear.
Yeah. So, and how important is it to be flexible? It sounds like you understand that you can't be rigid when you're out there painting. I mean, is that normally, like, are you that flexible that you improvise and just switch it up at the drop of a dime?
I mean, I can now, but I used to be very rigid in my mind. So, you know, like I've been exposed to different people. Like I've seen just recently, as a matter of fact, you know, 2020 has been a hell of a year for the graph culture, right? It's in many bad ways. But one of the best things and highlights for me was when Cos 207 showed up. I was just like, holy shit. So anyway, and this is leading to what I'm gonna tell you. And then so Cos and Bio were doing a car. And so, you know, Bio pulls out all this paint, and Cos is like, yo, what colors we gonna do? And Bio just goes, oh, we just grab this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then they just walk off, right? And I'm like, dude, like most of the time I sit and I look and I mull over it. And I'm like, maybe I'll do blues, maybe I'll do purples, maybe I'll do yellows. You know, and like not until I'm leaving the house do I have my final color selection. Like literally in a matter of minutes, in between the conversation that we were all having, Bio just threw these colors. They just literally throwing cans in the crate. I've seen Nicer do that. Nicer just goes, it's like he's in the art store and he just like, all right, grab me purple, grab me green, you know, and you don't even know what was going to come out. And then all of a sudden it just happens. So, you know, being exposed to them, I learned, you know, so I seen Seth do the very same thing too a couple of times. You know, we were working on a job and you know, we weren't really set on the colors, and he kind of just like, all right, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. And then the shit worked out, you know. So I kind of learned, you know, I'm a sponge around everybody that's around me, you know, and I absorb all the time. I have no problem watching and staring. You know, I'll stare as long as they let me stare to see, you know, their process and see what they do.
So, you know, speaking of learning and being a sponge, you know, in preparation for this interview, I listened to some other interviews that in the past that you've done and some recordings, and you mentioned Case 2 in an old interview.
Jeff.
And Mr. Jeff. And so, you know, I bring him up as one of these sort of icons that that are part of our culture, and obviously, you know, also a style master for his stylistic contributions. And he also happened to be a writer that was from your neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, what impact did some of these icons have on you? Some of these OGs, so to speak, people like a Case 2, or maybe someone like a Butch 2, writers that came maybe way before you, but that were still around when you were coming up, and that were around for decades afterwards.
I only met Butch once during the train writing era, and it was me, Trap, Butch, and Agent. It was a weird combination, but somehow we all wound up in the same place doing some stuff. But Case, it's interesting you bring him up, because I didn't know Case as a writer. In our neighborhood, he was kind of like a hood celebrity, right? As you would say, right? So everybody knew Case. He walked around with this huge persona, you know, and that booming voice whenever he wanted to raise his voice, you know what I'm saying? And like, you know, he was a very intimidating kind of cat. I actually witnessed him duff a couple of people out, you know, and put him to waste. So like, you know, he could definitely hold his own as far as that went. And so like, I used to go to, and now I'm a kid, right? I'm really, really a kid. This is even before I was ever thought about doing graffiti. I used to go to John Adam Projects. And that was like, you know, all of us were around. Zimad was around there. You know, Carl was around there, all of us. But they used to have the after school lunches. And I would go in there to get my little raisin cake and my little milk. And Jeff was in there working, passing out the cakes. And that's how I met him.
Funny. So yeah, so his reputation preceded the writing world.
Yeah, when I discovered he was a writer was when I saw Style Wars.
Wow.
And I was just like, yo, that's Jeff. You know, like I was just like, you know, and then all of a sudden he became even bigger than life, right? Because, you know, in my recognition, in my mind, looking at a television back in the day, anything that you saw inside of a television was unobtainable. It was out of my reach. It was fantastic. It was huge. It was big. So now all of a sudden he was inside the TV, and he just became like all the other celebrities and superstars inside my television. You know, and I was like, oh shit, you know. So then from that point on, I was looking at him in a whole different way. You know what I mean? And like, you know, and he was to me at first, he was like, get away from me, you bother me. Like that's the way he treated me.
Right. It's funny. It reminds me of a story that Crash shared during these art talks of him meeting Phase 2. And how he met phase two was that phase two was his basketball coach. He didn't know it was phase two. It was just the basketball coach, you know? And, you know, these are just people in our community. Some of these, you know, you just, if you're from that neighborhood, you know, these are members of your community. And it just happens to be that way. You're just lucky. And then when you find out who they are, it's just like a whole new mystery is revealed.
Yep, yep. Now I had a really special, once he knew who I was, I didn't realize how much he was watching me. But he wasn't like, you know, he wasn't generous with his compliments, to put it nicely. You know, and so I guess when I started getting okay and I was doing my thing or whatever, one day I was at the Hall of Fame in New York City. I was with Bam and a couple other people. And I'm doing the wall, and you know, he asked me to help him with his shit, with his piece. He was like, "Yo, do this on my piece, do that on my piece," right? And it still was kind of like that same, you know, almost the same like feeling like being a kid where like he's saying like, "Yo, do this for me," you know. And so I'm like, "All right," you know. And so I'm working on this piece, and then he turns around and says, "Yo, man, yo, that's why, you know," he says, "I always like what you did, you know, that you never did the same thing all the time. You always try something different." You know, and he was like, "That's why you're the Junior King of Styles," right? So that's neither here nor there, right? Because it's just something that a man said to another man, right? And somebody might not put that much, you know, weight to that, but within the culture and some of the traditions of the culture, like how you get your name, you know how you get your outlines, how you get your style, you know, to have somebody who was legendary at that time say that to you is kind of sort of like a come up. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, an acknowledgement that's worth more than somebody who may not be in the game the same way tell you that the shit was dope. You know what I mean? Like it just meant a lot, but it was on a personal level. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a statement to anybody other than to me.
Sure. No, that holds a lot of weight. You know, like you said, those compliments don't come too frequently.
He definitely didn't. He wasn't gratuitous, but he loved Bio though. Bio, if you out there, you know he loved you more than he loved anybody.
That's funny. So you know, speaking of this culture, you know, we're talking now more about, you know, members of this movement, right? And members of this, and this being a cultural movement, and sort of the importance of sharing um, these accolades, these stories, these memories, because this is our movement, you know, and you know, the reason why we do this at the Museum of Graffiti is because we care about this culture and we care about preserving these stories. And I believe that, you know, in speaking to you, you also have that care for this movement, and you can hear it when you speak, talking about battling, talking about, you know, stepping up with style and showing respect to your peers, and, you know, and these things. Tell us, you know, what is it for you that you find to be so important to sort of give back to this movement, you know, and you know, why has it touched you in such a way that you find it to be necessary to care so much about it?
So in college, I studied anthropology as a part of, you know, what I was doing, and so it's the study of cultures. And you know, by all the writings, all the people that preceded me, you know, the Marthas and the Henrys and the Joe Conzos and all the people have, you know, either chronicled or, you know, even Chino, yourself, all these people that have in some way, shape, or form have actually, you know, been a part of documenting and sharing these stories, you know, just made me understand how important it is, how important it was, and how important it is, and how important it will continue to be. So when you take the culture, what's very unique about our culture is, like, for instance, I don't know if during the time of, like, you know, maybe let's say the time of the Impressionists, right? Because, you know, some of them were around each other, whatever. But I don't know if people had access to them like they have to us. I don't know if people got a chance, if they talked amongst each other like we talk amongst each other. I'm sorry, and how that we actively still sort of do what we do, and we do it together, right? I wonder if it was that way, and I went pretty far in art history, and I know for sure it wasn't necessarily that way. So for us, while we're still here and we're still alive, right? Even though the stories can get a little repetitive sometimes, right? Because the trajectories sometimes are very, very similar, Only thing that changes are the names, you know, and maybe some of the highlights. But, you know, kind of sort of like you kind of hear the same story over and over and over. The important part about it is documenting who it is and who that guy was, you know, and what he was doing, right? And then, you know, over time, as this stuff keeps getting documented, continues to be documented, and they compile it, you know, it'll be there. It's a record. I mean, Instagram has actually been, you know, a beautiful thing and a curse at the same time for the culture. But it's there. It's on Instagram. Instagram has got to be the greatest repository of graffiti in the world.
It is a pretty tremendous source. I mean, it's nowadays, I would say it's, you know, to your point about maybe a gift and a curse, it's an incredible repository of images, right? Incredible. You can search and you could almost find a reference of anybody in the world. But now I think you're challenged to find the original sources of certain things. And so let's say, you know, you might see something that looks like it was from the Bronx from 1980, and you come across it, but actually it's from Naples, Italy from 2020.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to tell, like, is this person from the Bronx from 1980 or not? Like, where did this happen? How did this arrive here? And so I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not necessarily passing judgment on it, but it's definitely opened up access to styles and to writers like never before.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And so we're challenged, I think, in some ways, you know, or maybe it's not even that we're challenged, but it's definitely a new day now where there's no longer like a Bronx style or a Brooklyn style or a New York style that's totally its own, because that style now exists in probably 50 other cities.
Yeah.
And you can't tell them that it's not their style. They've assumed it, they lived it, they probably don't even get the message, the memo, until they maybe quit. And so now we're dealing with a truly global, you know, art movement, like truly global, that is self-regulating, if even that. It's totally free, it's totally open to anybody to participate in, much different than, let's say, the Impressionists. That might have been a very tiny school of artists. This is a really tremendous art movement that we're talking about.
Well, here's the curse of Instagram broken down for you. It's easy to understand. As a result of Instagram, the fact that we all post our pictures, we put our things onto social media, and then we present them in certain ways or for certain reasons, we become curators of information and content, right? Content is king, as they say, right? Everyone's a curator in their own right. In other words, people are painting stories. They're telling stories visually on their own, whether they know it or not. Well, in terms of the culture, there's a bunch of different lanes of people that are doing a bunch of different things in terms of the way they portray. You have guys that post the most incredible pictures. They go around taking pictures from everywhere else, and then they post it on their feed, and that's their purpose to be there. But then you have other people that turn around and they'll take the history and put it forth as they're not really curating it. It's like they're curating themselves into the history. And that's not the fact, right? Some of us are around and we can call that shit out and be like, yo, you know what? Actually, no, that's not true. What you're saying is not true. You know what I mean? And like some people may say that, well, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. Well, if it doesn't matter, then why are people still arguing about who discovered America?
Right. No, I think it's a really interesting point, because all of a sudden people place themselves someplace within a historical context that isn't necessarily true. And for me personally, like, you know, I'm not as old as you are. I know where I fit into the world of writing and what my particular writing career was as a teenager. But as someone that really cared when I was really young about the trains and watching the trains and painting the trains and photographing the trains, I spent hours and days and months and years living on those train platforms all over the city, to be able to take a photo of something that might have gotten buffed the next day. And so I really held what was happening on the trains in a really high regard, you know? Like I remember, I still to this day, look, I'm a 50-year-old man. I still remember the day that I first met Diro, right? For
Blue.
the first time when I met Blue and Psycho on the platform in the Bronx. Like, that's how much it meant to me. You know, I remember those things. And so these are important, you know, things that happen in our lives because we cared about this movement. And so now you see those pictures on Instagram that are swapped like trading cards, and people don't even say who the artist is, what it meant, what's the context, where is this, who is this person. It's just like, it's flippant,
But
you
sometimes they
know.
don't know. Sometimes they don't know,
Well,
right?
no, they don't know, and sometimes they put it and they ask any information, and it drives me crazy that someone could post a photo that they don't know anything of, asking for it. It's really outrageous to
So that's
me.
kind of that's the byproduct of social media, right? Because people, there's intent, right? And some people are just doing it for likes. They want to get as many likes as possible. And the graph culture, the writing culture is so amazing and so great that people will do anything to be a part of it. They'll lie, they'll
Yes.
steal, they'll do whatever they can to inject themselves or be in it. Like they was really in the trenches, not knowing from a lot of us that were really there, particularly during my time. I was in the graph game when it got violent. You know, the graph game was rough when I was, you know, and we were rough kids. Not for nothing, but we were rough kids. We lived in a rough neighborhood, rough kids. We were desensitized. Me, myself, personally, I was going through all kinds of things as a kid, and I had this defense mechanism which manifested itself in violence. So, like, usually that was my instant reaction to just about everything. I would fight back against anything that came my way, right? So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, at the end of the day, I don't know, you know, what social media is going to actually have as, in terms of impact in the long run on this, because I think that things are getting so watered down, right? So everything's getting shared, right? For instance, I saw Helio Bray. I forget how to pronounce, I don't know how to say his name, but I saw him in the comments or whatever. Like, yo, I'm so amazed by this dude. When I look and watch him paint, I'm just like, holy shit. He's doing that with fat caps. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know where to start. It's almost like performance art at this point, what he's
Yeah,
doing.
it's quite amazing.
In itself is performance art. So so it's great. It's getting shared. We're getting to see it or whatever, you know, but I don't know how we harness it. Like you said, it's a global thing. And how do you harness it? How do you harness the information? And how do you start, you know, kind of sort of weeding out what's not relevant and what's relevant? What's important to document and what's not important to document? Because at this point, social media is just documenting anything and everything that's graph.
Yeah.
But what is it that we decide is what's important to document, and what is it that we just decide, well, that's not so important?
Well, listen, I think we decide, as you mentioned before, because we're all content creators now, we decide how to do it, right? And so if we want to just post little pictures for likes, okay, that's one thing. But if we want to do something deeper, like have a conversation and explore our culture and share more, then I think that rises up on a different level, because now we're giving you the context. We're giving you the stories. We're giving you the background. We're giving you information. We're giving you our collective, you know, or our shared wisdom. And I think it's important for us to do that and to be open to that. And so, you know, you doing this interview, you know, a lot of these other artists that are on here right now listening to us, them agreeing to do these interviews, whether it's with us, whether it's in private, whether however we decide to do it, I think that that's part of moving our culture forward and documenting it properly and giving more worth and value than just that trading card image that people might be flipping just for likes and for whatever the hell that means, you know. And so I think that we, you know, I think as we're not teenagers, right?
Right.
We're elders in the game now. And so if we take responsibility, if we take it seriously, I think that we can contribute more into this being a very relevant and very respected and recognized art movement globally, beyond just, you know, like shits and giggles, you know. And I think it's up to us to step up to do that. And I know that you're doing that. And I know there's a lot of us out here, you know, in this movement that are stepping up, writing books, making films, you know, sharing stories, being honest, calling each other out when we're full of shit, you know. Like it's important to do that and to sort of be each other's keeper, right? And to contribute in a way that continues to give integrity and substance and truth to this movement, because as the days go on, and this has been a really tough year, we continue to lose members of our community. So many people have passed away from this community, that if we don't decide to take it seriously and share these stories, we won't have a record of it. We won't have a record of these memories. Like, I didn't interview Pre-Sweet, you know, and it's a shame, you know, it doesn't exist. I don't know if there's one existing in history, you know. And so, you know, I didn't get Nick 707 on here before he passed away this year. And now Nick is gone. And so I think that if we can, you know, just be serious about it, as much as we love to have fun, as much as we love to battle, as much as we love to, you know, just be social beings, I think that we also need to take responsibility and say, you know what, I am going to share some realness and some stories. And maybe it's just a story about case 2 that, you know.
Yeah, you know, I gotta say though, man, listen.
Go ahead.
I mean, that's great, and that's idealistic, right? It's a great notion. Yeah, you know, that we should do that. But I've been doing that for a long time. And what's happened as a result of that is I become the bad guy, right? Unfortunately for people, I've never been shy about confrontation, right? So like now I'm watered down and I'm chill. You know, had they been dealing with me back in the day, it'd have been a whole different story. So being in that position and stepping out there, I've had conflict with the fake Stay High 149, Checker, Riff, you know, then that whole MK debacle, Fed, Scheme. I mean, the list is really long. In every instance, I never actually started. I think the only one that you could probably say I started was the one with the fake Stay High 149. And it was just to say to him, yo, you're not the real Stay High. Like, this is the real Stay High. Like, yo, you over here faking the funk, like, for real, you know, and you talking craziness, you know what I'm saying? Oh, Miko, can't forget Miko. But then again, who hasn't had conflict with Miko? You know, always in the interest of saying, like I said to Miko, I said, Miko, look, what you did is great. What you did is fantastic. What you did is historical. What you did could never be done again. That's a fact. But don't forget that one defines the other. You can't have the past without the future. You can't have the future without the past. If we didn't continue to do what you started doing for us, then there would be no reason to talk about you. You know what I'm saying? At the same time as, yo, if you didn't do what you did, there would be no reason for me to even be interested in what I do now. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, but these guys don't get that. And I've always been placed in the position of being the bad guy because I'm vocal, I'm articulate when I want to be. And I could just be confrontational and be like, nah, dogs, it's not like that. You're not that dude. Sorry. I've done my studying. I've read quite a bit. You know, it's like I've read quite a bit about the culture, and I kind of, you know how it is, like you get the same story from different directions and then you kind of formulate your own opinion about it. And that's usually where I'm at. I'm right in that zone until people get disrespectful. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. We got
I know. Listen, I
amongst us that are like children when you're dealing with them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And they resort to schoolyard tactics. You know, and it gets indignant, gets ignorant, gets fucked up. You know, you're talking about legendary people, and you know, like I mean, some people will say some of the worst things on the planet about a person that's dead that you could ever imagine, and they'll really write this on social media. You know,
it's terrible. It's like terrible
publicly, and it's like, you know, so it's a hard task to take up, knowing that you're always going to be the bad guy. So I get that from people all the time. Like, yo, dude, if you actually knew me and you hung out with me, you see that, yo, I'm real chill. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just a little bit probably more on the serious side. But this is a result of my childhood. Now, if you talk to me about my childhood and where I came from, what I was involved in, then you would understand why I'm the way that I am.
Sure.
It's just like that.
Sure. No, listen, I understand it perfectly well. If you could imagine someone as crazy enough to go out and start a museum.
There you go.
You know, and
you gotta take you're gonna take the hits, right? Because, like, for instance, you know, and I can say this publicly, I can say to you, like, you know, when that whole other debacle happened and took place, I looked at you guys and I was like, yo, what's up with them? Like, yo, what happened there? You know what I mean? Like, but I don't have, right? So I was just talking rhetorically, right? Because I didn't call you up. I didn't talk to you on the phone. I didn't have a conversation with you. I didn't give you a chance to say, this is what it was. And then I talked to Mayor, and then Mayor told me, this is what it is, or this is what it was, you know, at the same time. But a lot of people have a conflicting, you know, opinion about that. And they felt, they felt all kind of ways. And then there's also the conversations about inclusion, you know, this, that, whatever, but they don't know the process. They haven't talked to you, how it happens, how you go about compiling, how you go about deciding what's permanent, what's not, what's on rotation. Like, you know, I understand all those things, but at the same time, you know, just saying to you that, yeah, like these conversations were taking place amongst us, you know, and we were to like, yo, what's up with that over there? What they doing over there? What's that about?
Sure. Now, listen, I think when you're on the outside of anything, there's always a curiosity about what's going on over there, right? Especially when it's something that we love and believe in so much, that we've all grown up in, that is so personal to us. So we're talking about an art movement that changed and impacted all of us as children, and that left an indelible mark on us as teenagers, as young men, changed our lives, right? And that we're still a part of, you know, like the men and the women that we've mentioned and that are on here today have been involved with this movement for a very, very long time. They're not those summer sensations or those overnight sensations, right? This is not the trendy crowd. These are the diehards, right? We're the ones that are lifers, that are part of this. And so, of course, it means more to us than probably it means to anybody in the world. And so what does that mean? That we are curious, that we're invested in it, that we're protective of it, that we care just a little bit more, that we're sensitive about it, that we are ready to attack, you know, when we think things are out of line. You know, we're not humble, you know, we tend not to be humble, right? Because we're passionate about something that we love and we believed in for, you know, decades and decades. And so I don't mind ever being the bad guy, you know, much like what you're saying. And so I actually prefer to be the bad guy, because then people are on their toes a little bit. You know, they have to be a little bit more weary or careful about their approach, because, you know, I'm okay to be a bad guy, you know. But in me being a bad guy, that just means, like what you're saying before, is that I don't mind telling it like it is, right? But most people don't know what each other are thinking. Like, no one really knows what I'm thinking when I make my decisions, because you're not at the meetings, right? You're not at the planning meetings with me. You don't know what is going on behind the scenes to decide, okay, we're going to put Stay High 149 on the wall right here, you know? And so when myself, you know, decide to do a museum or create an exhibition, a lot of people are like, you know, they don't understand what it takes to do that kind of work, to even want to do that kind of work. But in that work, there's a lot of decision making, right? To pick one object takes a lot of deliberation. And so what I always tell people when I hear, you know, salty old timers that are saying like, oh, I can't believe, you know, this guy's not in the museum, you know, or that person is not in the museum, I say, well, they're maybe not in the museum yet. Right? This is a tremendously large art movement with tens of thousands of practitioners.
But you get it, right? You get it.
No, I get it. I get it.
No,
I get it. Listen, I get it. I'm in the hot seat all the time. I mean, sometimes the answer is very easy, because sometimes people bring people up and I'm like, no, but that person's a toy. And then that's it. That the answer is done.
Yeah,
like,
but you know,
we're not running the toy museum, right?
But then it's like, it comes down to like, you know, like what are the qualifications to get in there? You know what I mean? So it's like, if like,
sure.
If you're just gonna say someone's a toy, it's like, that's based on what, right? Because it's like people are gonna say something no matter what, right? But at the end of the day,
of course.
I think the you know, where I reacted, I'll just speak for myself. Can't speak for everybody else, because then I have to rat them out. But where I was taken off track was where I was like, wait, you know, the implication here is that I'm dealing with experts, and they kind of missed this right here. You know, like, wait a second, you know, like what's going on? Because I heard
Right.
some of the other chatter, right? And I heard guys, oh, yo, they didn't include me, they didn't whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's gonna come with the territory. Everybody's not in Star Wars. Everybody's not in Getting Up. Everybody's not in. You know what I'm saying? That it's just in every single people kick Martha and Henry. Not that many, but a lot of people have. I've heard a lot of people say negative things about them, and
Sure.
I'm like, yo, I don't understand that frame of thought. If you didn't like their photography, you didn't like what they did, you didn't like what they fine to say I don't like what they did, but don't say that, oh well, they had an agenda, or they were this or they were that, because did you talk to them? The flip side of that is that people are still going to talk, people are going to ask questions. So that was where I was coming from, where I was like, yo, you know, and then it kind of like I did what I do, because that's what I do, right? I call shit the fuck out, and it is what it is, and people got upset. You know, and even if dude is listening right now, I'll be like, yo, dude, listen, at the end of the day, everybody was right. Maybe on social media wasn't a place for that. But,
right.
You know, it happened. It is what it is. And that's the only thing that I did wrong. Everything else I did right. Because if you love the culture as much as I love the culture, then that's what you're supposed to do. In other words, you're supposed to call out the bullshit. You're not supposed to offer up any bullshit. That's the way we rock. That's how we get it.
Yeah. No, listen, and if you're given, and to me, I think, you know, to sort of just, you know, finalize this point, when you're invited to an art talk, right? When I invite you to an art talk, the museum invites you to an art talk, Mayor invites you to an art talk, we're inviting you because we value you, right? We recognize your contribution, and we want to know about you. We want you to share with the world things that that I might already know, things that Mayor might already know, but we find it valuable to amplify that out to the world. And so when we invite someone like yourself, or anybody else for that matter, it's a very personal invitation to tell a very personal story about your history. And so the Museum of Graffiti, right, which is now not even a year old, right, doesn't have the encyclopedia of this movement that we want to have yet. We're in a baby phase yet. We're in our infancy. And so when we invite people to come on, it's to gather knowledge for ourselves and to share knowledge. And so we go under the assumption that the information that's going to be shared with us and with the audience is accurate, that it isn't falsified, that it is, because we're looking at you as a source, as a first-hand source of information. And so when I ask you about REMOG and dips in that car, you cited that you painted the dips, right? And the MOG and etc. And that's first-hand information. That's history right there, right? And so we accept that as truth now.
But I also know that, like, for instance, she knows he's listening, and he knows that if I started lying about that shit, he'd be the first one to say, yo, that's a lie.
No, I get it. But what's the point if we can't even show up with integrity and honesty and truth?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know.
That's the point. The point is we're adults here. We're grown-ups.
That's the crazy part about it.
We're grown men and women, right? Are you going to tell me that someone needs to lie about something that someone doodled when they were 12 years old? Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, they actually do.
But then now you know that that's just crazy, right?
Well, to me, it's crazy. I don't need to make up no lie. Listen, trust you me, like, the stories are out there, and the people that know me know, right? So I don't really need to I'm comfortable in my, so you got to look at the psychology of it, right? Somebody who tends to lie a lot, somebody who tends to over exaggerate their accomplishments or whatever, is usually grounded in a certain level of insecurity.
Yeah,
I get it. Whether it's a personal insecurity or insecurity of where they've arrived at life. And you can go through the list of all these guys that are doing this, you know, that are actually behaving this way, and you'll see that common thread. You'll see that constantly and consistently across the board, where there's that thing, and it points it out. You're like, yeah, well, it makes sense. I know why.
No, I listen. And I get it now, and I think that, you know, part of the learning process within sort of the documentation of these interviews is to know who has the sort of propensity for exaggeration, who has the propensity to not keep it real, and speak the truth.
Yeah, I didn't tell you about those 418 cars I did.
You know what I'm saying? And you know, and even more challenging is when someone makes a claim and there is no photography, there
Yeah,
is no
yeah,
documentation, there is
yeah.
no, like, not even one thing, you know, and so it makes it really hard to believe. But, you know, I want, you know, we're quickly running out of time, and I know that there's some
Quick
questions
15, a
from
quick 15.
folks, you know, and I see some questions. So we're going to open it up to some questions. And I have a question here from none other than Mayor. Who are your favorite modern style writers and why?
Modern, so How and Nazem, because of their range, is ridiculous. They could do regular burners, they could do 3D, they could do whatever. They go the gamut across the board. Two of my favorites before I met them. They really became my favorites when I met them. Let me see who else today. Cantu is always going to be a favorite of mine. You know, it's just like he just has a certain look and feel about the way he does what he does. Bates is my dude. Met him once, don't know him, but always been a true follower of his, of the modern guys. And then now I got up on this guy, Hevio Bray, you know, and I'm just like, whoa, this cat is like really, you know, amazing. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a whole list of guys, but those are the guys that just came to mind right now.
Okay, another question. Do you get impressed when painting with someone you admire?
I still do to this day. I still do. I watch Nicer paint, and he has this rhythmic way of painting that's like so, like it's not even planned. Like he's not even focusing. He's just chilling. You know, he's just, and you watch it. It's just real painterly. He paints into the air. He paints here. The next thing you know, you look at this thing and it has so much detail and style to it. So yeah, I still get impressed. I'm just like blown away by people.
Another question is, have you been paying attention to all these trains that are being painted in New York City right now? And what do you think about that?
So my oldest brother is the highest hired position in New York City at this point in New York City Transit. I see all the trains. I see trains people don't see.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
I follow it.
Okay, and what about and what's your impression of it? Any opinion on it?
So it's not about style no more, right? It's about getting up and bombing, right? And to me, it's just like, yeah, it's still here. It didn't go nowhere.
It's pretty incredible. All right. Another question. What is your hope for the future of our culture?
The hope?
Yeah.
I just hope that eventually it becomes something that's worth studying at high levels of education, right? That it becomes something that's in art history books. You know what I'm saying? That it's formulated and taught. That people start to look at what we do and not like it's a happenstance, not like it's a mess, not like it's just guys doing style. That they start looking at the nuances of that create style, the technique that creates style, and all the things that go with it.
I like that. Another question here. This is from Sexer. He says, I got an old school question. What do you regret not doing back then? Meaning back in the days.
I don't think it's what I don't regret not doing. I think it's what I regret doing, which got me in trouble in '85 and got me out of the game. Because if I stayed in the game, more than likely I would have painted with, you know, with the Talent Crew cats and, you know, with Dero. You know, I would have painted with Bind. More than likely, these are the guys who were around where I was at. You know, like, so that's what I regret. I regret what happened, not necessarily what didn't happen. Everything else, it is what it is. I had a great time.
All right, let's see. What other questions do we have here? I think there's a question that's in the feed. Someone asks, how many years in total have you been writing?
At this point?
Yeah, from the time that you started and then stopped and started again.
So I guess started getting up. Now I'm not going to claim where I started, but I'm going to tell you when I started getting up on the trains, 81, then out in 85, 4 years, right?
Okay.
Started painting in 2003, still painting today.
Okay. So for those of us, you know, for those of you out there that are still on here with us, my name is Ket, K-E-T. This is SADE, S-A-D-E, TCM crew. You've been rocking with us for about an hour, 2 hours almost, talking about writing and trains and telling our stories and hearing about Sade's personal story of writing from 81 until today. And so for all of you guys that are on here, from Sentu to Puerto Rican Rob to Mayor to Doc to everybody else, we want to, Merc as well, Fear 153, want to say thank you, and Kaz for joining us. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to ask. We also recognize you, Break, and we recognize you, Part One,
Break,
and Dero.
my man.
So many writers on here. Helio Bray.
Don't forget, we need to see Blue. He's the last legitimate king of the 5 and 2s. Remember that.
We got to get him on here. We haven't had Blue on here for an interview yet.
You need Sack.
So we'd love to.
You need Sack. Even though me and Sack don't see eye to eye, but you need Sack, king of the one line.
Yep, Sack's king of the one line. There's so many artists within this movement that have contributed. I mean, if you think about all the trains in New York City during all those decades when they were running, and even beyond that, just the incredible amount of writers. If you just you said the one line, if you only take the one line, there's so many writers on the one line.
TMT that all day,
right?
Regardless, those guys, I mean, I didn't get a chance to see a lot of TMT. I saw Fed more than I saw Cade and Team because they were before that, right? But I saw Fed, because I don't know why at the time, but I got to see a lot of his stuff. And then I got to see a lot of Part, Chain, Cool, like I saw all those and like I saw them and didn't know what I was looking at the time. And then later on as an adult, when I started really looking at it, I was like, holy shit, you know what I mean? Like, some of my favorites, even like Mean 3. I used to like his pieces. I don't know if he's the one who did them or who else was doing them. Dez was, like, who didn't like Dez? Dez was like my hero, for
so clean.
When back then on the trains, you know what I mean? Like that, he was the dude to me. You know what I mean? It was like, it is what it is. It's like, you can't take that. You can't take that lightly. You know what I'm saying? Because like each and every single one of those guys is why I do what I do. Hands down, every single one of them. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if I see my contemporaries, my friends, my close personal friends that are writers that are still get busy, I get busy because they get busy. That's the only reason. That's the only reason why I do it.
I think one of the great things about this movement and where we're at today is that so many people come back. So many people come back to paint. I mean, you mentioned before, Cause 207 came back.
That was he started
painting
dropping
again.
He posted up a car that lived in my mind for 38 years or 37 years, that lived in my head. That was a moment that went by in seconds. That it was imprinted in my head that when I saw the car, I was like, oh shit, that's the car, but that's not the way. I remember that, but I don't remember that. Like I started looking at it closely again. I was like, yo, and I'm sure that a lot of people will agree, those guys, rock stars, Kel, I became friends with Kel as an adult, Man, Shy, Kaz, there's a few other guys, but those guys, man, the cars, men, it's like, it was crazy, like what they did. So, I'm like, it's them. It's not really me. I'm the byproduct of those dudes.
And so you've got to paint with some of these guys. That I see a question in here.
Yeah.
About painting with Kel.
Yeah, I did a piece with Kel in Seattle, and then I did a train attached with Kel.
How was that? Was it the same thing? Like you get to paint with these guys that you grew up seeing their work?
Kel showed me photographs that I've never seen anywhere else. Which was, I felt privileged, you know what I mean? I happened to be around Kel during, like a really critical time. It was literally the day that my dad died. I was in Seattle and I was with his family, and they embraced me in a way that made it even like I used to look at him, from a graffiti perspective, I used to look at him like one of the gods. But then when he embraced me like that, he solidified himself because, we meet these people and then some of them fall short of what we imagine in their mind it would be. But he definitely, the way his family embraced me at the time, during that time, elevated him a little bit higher. But yeah, it's like, and then some of the jewels and things that we've spoken about and these stories that he's told me, that are not common stories. I've never seen them anywhere. You know what I mean? So I felt like, yo, that's pretty cool, man. You still have that, you still feel that weight because that's that dude. regardless, however you want to
Yeah.
look at it. He is that dude, regardless. He could be, you know, he's Mayor's brother. I'm sure Mayor could look at him and say, yeah, you that dude. You my brother, but you that dude, you know?
Since some people, their contributions to this movement are great.
Yeah.
You know, some people just had, you know, really contributed in a way that not everybody contributes. You know, we might all play with it, but some of us, you know, some within this movement are the standouts, and they've raised the bar for everybody.
Yeah, that's the way it is. You know, it's beautiful.
That's right. That's right. So, you know, we're coming close to the 2-hour mark.
Yeah.
If anybody has questions, please let us know. You know, this is the last few minutes with SADE. We're here answering questions. If you got anything, hit us up. I'm down to answer some questions if you guys want. But more importantly, thank you guys for so much for joining us tonight, for spending some time hearing these stories, and being part of this culture. You know, caring enough about this to listen in and to hear these stories, and you know, to share these stories with us. It's much appreciated. Your time's appreciated. Your involvement in the culture is appreciated. I appreciate you guys, and everything that we do, or at least I'll speak for myself. Everything that I do within the Museum of Graffiti is because of my love and admiration for this movement and for the contributions of everybody else, much less just my own personal contribution as a writer. I'm more like the writer that you said before, Sade, that just goes out in pieces like crazy, whatever, and doesn't really plan it out. You know, I'm that street dude that still paints like that. But I have a love and an admiration for folks like you that are more maybe strategic and plan some beautiful things out. You know, I have to work on some other stuff, so I don't have that luxury or find that sort of time for that. I'm still sort of a kid and that likes to run around the streets sometimes.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it, and I appreciate your contributions very much.
Thank you.
And everything that you've done and that you continue to do, and we hope that you can continue to do it for many, many years down the line.
I hope so.
There's a question here, a funny question. Someone asked, are we still active?
No.
I would say we're probably the retired guys
Yes.
in the movement. I would say I'm deep into retirement, but I sneak away and paint every now and then. But my what I do contribute is different now, and so this is always, I think, truly a young man's game. You know.
I just want to say real quick before we get cut off. Yo, Part, I saw you. He nicknamed me the Battle Warden. I saw you. I saw all my people. I saw you, Nisa. D-Road. I saw you, Kay. I've seen everybody. Yo, even Soap is in here.
There's a lot of heads in here. And so
I appreciate it, man. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Of course. So listen, everybody, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you again so much for joining us today to hear Sade's story and sharing his wisdom. My name is Ket, K-E-T. This is the Museum of Graffiti. This is our Art Talk series. Please tune in. These talks are very important for us because it gives us an opportunity to hear from members of our community, from writers that are contributing with substance for this movement. And so these are all saved right here on IGTV. You can go back and listen to them all. There's about 100 of these interviews, and so dig in, check them out. The Museum of Graffiti is located in Miami, Florida, in Wynwood. So if you come down to Miami, come and see us, visit the museum. We could use your support. We think that you'd love what you'd see if you come and visit us. And if you're fans of the movement, check us out online as well. We have a great gift shop online filled with tremendous amount of books about this movement, many that are hard to find, that should be on your bookshelf if you care enough to do that. And so we once again appreciate your support. Tune in next week. There's some great interviews coming up. Mayor will be back, and we'll see you then. Sade, thank you.
Peace, people.
Peace.